Hey, it's Stanley Adwell with Intellisteel CEO and co-founder. I'm sitting with.
John Law, Project Integration Manager for Intellisteel.
So we're sitting in right now Holland, Ohio, on a 94,000 square foot assisted living facility that we've started erecting just recently, and we're making quick headway on it. So just walk us through what we're looking at in terms of stage and timing and where we're at framing wise.
So we're most of the way through the third floor with framing. We've been in production for about 6 weeks now. So we've erected somewhere in the ballpark of 70,000 square feet in the last 6 weeks of framing.
Yeah.
Targeting completion here in the next couple of weeks to get the roof on.
I think we heard the other day that they had a schedule of I think
8 weeks.
we had a schedule of 8 weeks, but before that they had a schedule prior in wood of being, I think 14 to 18 weeks.
Yeah,
or
I
something.
think the prior schedule before we got involved and showed them some of the ways we can accelerate their schedule was between 12 and 14 weeks, and then they ended up shaving that down to 8-week timelines was their target for both projects.
So I think that starts to show kind of where offsite panelized framing takes the framing off the schedule and brings it to the job site and just creates an installation. So that framing schedule total completion gets reduced as a result. From your perspective, so John comes to us from previously on the general contracting side, and he actually was working on a project with us with one of our top general contractors, who we've got several projects with. In fact, They come from Wolverine. And from your perspective, when you first got introduced to Intellisteel and you knew that we were going to go steel framing, from your perspective, what is early framing on a job site, like the way that we do it, improve the job site from a general contractor's perspective?
Just capturing all the things that we run into, no matter if it's wood or if it's steel. It doesn't matter the means and methods of how you frame a building. You're still going to have conflicts with toilet flanges. You're still going to have conflicts with plumbing stacks, HVAC, ductwork through the building. You're going to have conflicts regardless. And the old way of doing things was just go out there, hack it up, and we'll figure it out with a Sawzall later.
And RFI it to death, and then reduces, and that increases schedule, that increases cost.
Right, and there's a lot more labor involved. The punch lists are a lot longer. Yeah. The pre-planning and the pre-work that was done on the project that I was on helped us accelerate to speeds that most people thought were preposterous. So we were putting up 20,000 square feet a week of framing.
Was that framing still requiring a lot of punch out, or was it pretty much punch and trade ready?
No, I mean, it's punch and trade ready. And the nice thing about steel is the simplicity. The details don't change depending on whether it's 2x8 or a 2x6 or whatever nominal lumber size you're using. It's very repeatable. So once the guys kind of have it down and they've laid out a floor, all the next floors that are a carbon copy, they just increase speed throughout the project.
When you looked at what we were doing and you saw there was an opportunity to go metal framing, which you've got experience in metal framing, right?
Yep.
So when you saw what we were doing, when you came down to visit Intellisteel, what did you see that you could solve with what we were doing?
Well, first it was just working with a panelizer that would actually listen to like real world problems that I've come across. Mm-hmm. Like every single shower wall I've ever had installed on a project previously, there's a stud right where the diverter is, right? So I went through a litany of different problems that I've had in the past, where I then have to pay somebody, a carpenter, by the hour that we don't have captured in our GCs to go through and do all these modifications. So I came to you guys and just said, hey, look, these are all the problems I had in the past. You don't have to sell me on steel. I know it's a superior product, but if you can fix these things that just eat into my bottom line, then that's all I need. I'm 100% sold.
Right on. And I think it was interesting because when we got involved with John on a project prior, their company was new to cold form steel. John had some framing experience, so he was kind of promoting it inside, like, hey, let's encourage us to go forward. Let's go down and take a look at it. And I think from our perspective, having a proactive general contractor like we did, that allowed for us to be in a position to kind of have a working collaboration, which is where construction lacks, where there is a disconnect often between trades and suppliers. So we've been able to do that. I think that was a big plus for the way that succeeded.
Well, to be fair, I didn't even know the name Intellisteel, and I got a call 6 months before we even started the job, and they said, we're talking about converting this from wood to cold form steel. And I said, what are you waiting for? Because of all the issues I've had, mainly with dissimilar materials, like we obviously try to design out hot rolled steel on projects if we can, but there's times where you just have to have it. There's no choice. And I've had so many problems over the years with using wood, which strengths and settles and cracks,
Yeah.
and then structural steel, which obviously doesn't.
Right.
Having it punch through the floor, all sorts of different issues. And it was very similar. That project had incorporated hot rolled steel, and then we were attaching LVLs and different girder trusses and whatnot to the steel. So as soon as I heard cold form steel, I was sold. I didn't need to know anymore.
Right on. We love to hear that. What was your first reaction when you started to see panels arrive on the job site? What did you see react both? I'll give you two questions, from a general contractor's perspective and from the installers. How did you see people react when the panels started to come and how they started to install? Was there a positive reaction? Was there a resistance? How did it go?
I mean, to be honest, I don't think there was. The way the guys in the field looked at it was, this is how we're building the building, and to them, at that point they were married to the idea of it.
They were bought in.
But pretty quickly, they started to realize that it does come in a cadence. It does come in sequential order. When you're receiving deliveries, you're getting one area, then the next area. We're not putting the cart before the horse, and you're just getting stuff at random.
Yeah.
It was loaded on the trucks in a way that makes sense for the installation sequence on the project itself. So that was a pretty big difference that we noticed right away.
Okay. So, for example, where we're sitting right now, this is kind of a U-shaped building. And this area, they decided to kind of go vertical at the same time while they're going horizontal the other way. Is that right?
Yep.
Is that something that is prescribed? Is something you'd like to see from a general contractor's perspective? Or is it just that you have the option to do it any way you want?
Well, the nice thing about steel is we don't have creep and crawl. We don't have the variances that you have with a natural product with wood. So you can kind of pick and choose however you want to build your building. If you want to take a stack of units all the way up and then start working across, so you have some vertical areas for your MEP trades, you can do that. Or you can just build the building straight across like you normally would in traditional wood framing or just traditional framing altogether. The main difference is we can focus on structural components with steel, and we can get to the roof faster.
Yeah.
That's our major milestone on every project is dry in, right? That's
Right.
a huge date on the
Absolutely.
critical path. And so being able to get there faster with steel is a huge advantage for contractors when they're figuring out their GCs and how long it's going to take them to build a building, because we don't have to run double top plate on every wall in the entire building.
Right.
We can focus on structural components and then do the non-structural components later when it makes sense.
Right. I think that's a big advantage too in the way that we deliver our stuff. Tell me about like tolerance. So you mentioned before that you like that wood. The difference between wood and cold form steel is that wood you often you got to load it, let it settle, let it shrink, right? And then address it from there. What kind of problems does that create in terms of both schedule from a general contractor? What does it do to you guys? And then where does it cold form steel differ?
Well, those costs and those timelines to fix all those issues that we'll get into are never actually captured in the schedule. It's just something that we know we have to do, and we scramble at the end of the job every time to get them done, right? Screw pops in the drywall, cracking in the drywall from where you have settlement in a building. A lot of drywall imperfections and defects that get you really hung up in the punch list. And when you're doing punch list, that's when you can actually see the light at the end of the tunnel on a job, right? Where you're like, okay, we're gonna have this turned over, this is the date, and everyone's scrambling to get punch list done, and you and the painter are in there till 9 o'clock every single night, right? Yeah. The difference with steel is it doesn't do that, and so it saves a lot of time on the punch list. You still have your normal punch list stuff that you would have on any job, but the drywall defects are really, really mitigated because the system is rigid, it doesn't flex, you're not gonna get shrinking, cracking, screw pops, etc.
Right. So this is an inside question, right? And maybe you have the answer to this. So we often talk about when general contractors are budgeting a project, they're going through the hard costs, they're going through the hard cost numbers. How much of the hard cost numbers actually relate to the final cost to build and call it traditional construction when you now have to add in all of those other items that were not considered? Let's call it the RFIs, let's call it the chopping up parts and pieces, let's call it getting new details, let's call it remediation, and all of that happens. How much of that really is captured in the cost?
None of it's actually captured and thought through at the beginning of a project. I mean, I've had the pleasure of working with some really detailed, very organized general contractors, but I've never seen once a line item in a budget or a schedule for rework, for this or that. We'll have placeholders for punch list items because you have to have that time allotted in the schedule, but we don't have budget line items for relocating trusses, altering walls, fixing window openings, fixing our creep and crawl. when we're doing long hallway walls. None of it's actually accounted for. So you start to really notice the difference when you've done a couple floors. If you're new to it, when you do a couple floors with cold form, you start to realize, okay, we can work at roughly the same cadence or the same speed, the same pace that we would in wood, but it is a lot faster because you're not having to have extra guys on the payroll that are back there just fixing defects and dealing with issues.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I'm, kind of the point that I'm getting at is often too early we are compared to, let's call it wood as a traditional construction method. And what happens is we're told that our cost might be at the same or even just slightly higher in some cases. Most cases we're lower, but in those cases, I don't think that the general contractor has fully captured their total cost to build versus their hard cost, quote or estimation up front.
Yep.
Okay.
100%.
All right. What point did you go from installing our product to wanting to be a part of our product? Because I know that just happened kind of organically, right?
Yeah, it happened pretty organically. I mean, I was in love with the idea of it from day one because I didn't think this was possible, mainly because, I was your typical American that didn't know what the rest of the world was up to as far as means and methods in construction.
Yeah.
Here in the States, when we're doing mid-rise multifamily, it's just all wood all the time. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And then I heard about these guys down in Florida that are doing essentially what we do with wood panels, but with cold form steel. And I was intrigued right away because I said to myself, if they're not lying, if this is true, this is a game changer, right? Somebody's finally figured out how to do this. And then I started learning about the history of it all from you guys about how it's very popular overseas.
Yeah, very.
And it's basically the only way they build overseas, right? For a number of different reasons. Here, we're just talking about all like the bullet point, hard cost reasons why you would want to do this. But obviously, there's a million other things we can talk about and capture, like LEED certifications, green energy credits, zero waste. I mean, there's a million different things we can talk about. But for me,
when you were going through the project, was there a tipping point for you that you thought, I'm no longer going to do what I've always been doing as a project manager, but I'm now going to think about cold form steel in some form or fashion? Was there a tipping point?
There definitely was. I mean, I was a believer right from the jump. Like I wanted to believe in it because it's something that I wanted to see.
Yeah.
So it didn't take much persuasion for me, but once I saw the scale at which you guys were doing it and that this wasn't a one-off, that you had customers all across the country, up and down the eastern seaboard, there was real interest in the market. And I started, people started asking me questions from around the country. They wanted to come up and tour the job site. When I saw how much interest it garnered with the general contracting community and the developer community and even the architect community, right? That was kind of the tipping point where I was like, okay, this is real. I want to go do this.
You did a number of tours, I guess, right? At the other projects.
Yeah, I mean, and I had calls from all around the country. After hours, people would call me and ask questions. How did you do this? How did you do that? And just kind of gave them the survival guide on it.
So when you looked into this, you probably also, since you were thinking about going to steel, you're probably talking to other people, installers and maybe even other manufacturers like us. What was the deciding factor for you for Intellisteel?
Intellisteel is doing what nobody else in the space is doing as far as here domestically in the United States, right? So there's tons of people across the country that have bought frame CAD machines that think, all right, I can buy this machine and it's going to fix all my problems. The difference was here, everyone from detailing and engineering all the way down to the guys on the factory floor that put the panels together all understand what the mission is. They all work really well together. And you could pick up the phone and call anybody and they'll help you answer your questions, whether you're wondering when a truck is coming or if you're like me and you're on the phone with the detailers every day, like, hey, can I change this? Can I change that? What can I do here? I have a better way of doing this. Is this possible? Everybody was very collaborative, very team oriented, and that was like the biggest selling factor for me on Intellisteel was like, you guys have we have the hard skills on how to build buildings and how to avoid conflicts and how to do these things, but the soft skills are something that's also really important to me when I was a GC wanting to work with certain vendors or certain contractors, because if you mesh well together, then you're going to be successful.
Well, I think the general contractor that you worked for, Wolverine, I think they were a very, very proactive group. They got out in front of this when they found out they were going to do it, and you guys all came down. I think you guys made 3 or 4 trips down just to really understand it And we tried to get way out ahead of you guys, so you had the flexibility on your job site to move. If you needed to adjust to a different location, we had the material ready for you guys to go.
Yep.
So you've been on job sites where things go sideways, right? Budget, schedule, material. What's a conversation like on a traditional framing job? For example, when lumber prices spike and change orders come in, like what happens in that scenario for a general contractor?
Well, I mean, it's difficult, right? I mean, there was a period of time right after 2020 where everyone was trying to lock in scheduled dates on these projects where we didn't even know if we were going to get a contract for them, right? And you're trying to buy lumber on the future market and lock in a price at like where they think it's going to be at this point in time. It's all speculative and completely subjective, right?
Right.
The difference, another thing that I really liked about what you were telling me about the steel market is that we're buying steel from the same mills that provide for the largest companies in the world, whose products you have in your home today, right? Samsung, LG,
Right.
Ford Motor Company, Toyota.
People don't realize that, but that's what cold form steel is. It's
Right.
automotive and electronics.
So
appliances.
wood, if you look at the price of wood, it's more like oil. It's a commodity. It's up, it's down. The steel is relatively stable. I mean,
It is.
there's price increases that happen in every industry, but we're obviously buying from people that have leverage, like Ford Motor Company, that is unmatched in the world, right?
Yeah.
So they really help regulate the industry and
Agreed.
keep costs low.
I think that's a great point. I think that when you look at it from the outside, wood looks like like someone on a polygraph trying to evade getting prosecution, right? And it just goes up and down. And you've got steel that has this very slow, steady flow. And the good news about steel is that we get notification from the mill in advance, well in advance, when there's going to be material increases potentially. That gives us the ability to turn around and go to our general contractors and our owners and say, there's an opportunity that there might be a tick. And if you want to grab it, grab the steel. We've had a customer recently who I think 8 months in advance just locked down the entire steel order for the project at one shot. And he did so at the right time, and it worked out well for him. So
Right.
it does help. So we talk a lot about schedule, all right, and speed. And from your experience running installation, how much faster do you actually see it really go? Like, I think that on one of your projects, you guys had gotten some issues where you guys got behind on concrete issues or something like that, things that were just outside of everybody's control. How do you see installation compression go with cold form steel panelized versus traditional?
I mean, it's way faster, right? I mean, I would say, just as like a boilerplate statement, for every month that you have in a framing schedule, you can take at least a week, if not, let's call it 8 working days out of that schedule.
That's a good
which is fair. I mean, that's not even like super aggressive. The other thing that's nice about steel is you can start from one end of the building and the other end of the building and work towards each other because we don't have to deal with all the creep and crawl. We're not having to measure each individual panel and make
That's
sure
a
it's
good
going to
point.
fit.
Yeah.
So there's a number of different ways we can attack it. Where you can put a an additional crew on a job site, right? So you're going to have 10 framers on this crew, you're going to have 10 framers on this crew, and then they start working towards each other. And then obviously when I was a GC, if I had 2 crews with each other, you playfully pit them against each other, right?
Sure,
Like, hey,
sure.
these guys say they can go faster than you guys, and then you watch them and they just, they're getting up there getting after it. So, I mean, we were putting up, at our peak, 20,000 square feet a week of
Yeah.
framing, and I've never seen a wood job do that. I've heard some guys say they can do it. I've never seen it with my own eyes. I've been able to testify that, yeah, it is possible.
So you felt like when you needed to, or you feel like even today, if you need to, we can actually put the throttle down
Yeah,
and pick up that speed and pace with fewer people than you typically would have in traditional?
100%.
Okay.
With fewer people, I mean, that's the important thing too, right? Like, if you're going to do 20,000 square feet a week in wood, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'd like to know how many people are on the job site, right? It's going to be a lot more than we would have here.
You think there'd be a lot of punch left too if you're going that
Oh, of
speed?
course. Has
Yeah.
to be.
If a GC called you today, someone like where you were 3 years ago, and asked if they should try CFS, what would you tell them?
It's a no-brainer. I mean, I don't mean that to sound like,
Flip it.
I don't mean that to sound like, are you stupid? Obviously, I mean, that's not at all where I'm coming at from it. If you have questions or concerns, I mean, yeah, for sure. If it's something that's outside of your wheelhouse, like we work with a lot of general contractors that are wood framing general contractors,
Sure we
right?
do.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of concerns that they have. What about this? What about that? The other thing about Intellisteel is our team will walk you through the process from start to finish. And if you need baby steps, we'll do baby steps. Most people, once they agree to do it and they jump in on it, they realize The means and methods aren't that different.
Right.
Because wood framers who do panelized jobs convert to this better than traditional metal stud drywall guys.
Yeah, that's a good
that
point
work
you
inside
made.
of a strip mall, right?
Yeah.
But then they start to realize there's not as much going back and fixing things and redoing things and adjusting things. There's not as much of that. One, because our team goes through a great deal of effort to avoid conflicts, mainly with plumbing and ductwork, but also because the product is man-made. It's not a naturally occurring product that has natural variations like lumber does.
Right. Would you say that we get out of our lane sometimes to help our customers?
Oh, of course.
I think that that's probably one of our advantages. I think that we've got general contractors on staff. We got structural engineers on staff. We even have a BIM modeler and architect who doesn't operate or act as one, but on our design engineering team, that's what she does. And I think that, when we're involved in the design process, it allows for us to contribute more, to take those problems that are coming on the job site that typically a general contractor would experience. What people like on this job, for example, what Douglas company might not know, the guys on the site, is how much work we've done upstream to try and mitigate things that would have crushed them on the job site schedule or cost.
Yep.
They don't see that. And that's not their fault. It's just that we are actually upstream trying to mitigate these issues well in advance. And that helps the entire stakeholder all the way down to the owner, right? So the owner gets the advantage of the speed. The GC gets the advantage of taking the risk off that we've mitigated. That's because we stepped out of our lane as a building material supplier. It's hard for us to call ourselves that because that kind of puts us pigeonholed into being a window supplier or a door supplier. The reality is we're a very, very unique, vertically integrated building material supplier that provides a lot more, as you mentioned, a lot more structural engineering, construction experience that we can come to the job sites just like you did today and sit down with the general contractor and walk them through the framing, walk them through the issues that they're going to run into, show them where they've got alternatives and solutions to be able to mitigate without having to disrupt schedule and cost.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
yeah, I think that's a big deal. From a developer standpoint, who's never touched it. If you were talking to a developer, I think we talked to one yesterday.
Yep.
What would you tell a developer from his perspective and his purview about why he might consider this?
The first and foremost is insurance, right? I mean, just builder's risk alone, not even if we get into general liability. I mean, that's a long term. If you're
Just takes it off the charts.
But if you're a build and hold developer, right, like your long term general liability insurance, you're not going to see the year-to-year increases like you would with a combustible structure.
Right. That's correct.
You're going to hold it for a lot longer, and your premiums aren't going to raise nearly as much. But from a builder's risk perspective, like I had a consultation a few years ago with builder's risk, the insurance provider that came out and said, for every dollar we take in claims, we're paying out $1.68, or every dollar we take in policy, we're taking it or showing out $1.68 in claims. The two major claims that they have, I would say at least 3/4 of what they're paying out on are fire and water.
Fire and water, yeah.
And I mean, obviously, I'm a northern guy. We don't deal with termites nearly as much as you guys do in the south, that kind of thing. And that's more of a long-term issue. But fire and water are really big deals. Obviously, you can't burn cold form, and it's impervious to water damage.
And on a project site, for example, let's talk about this for a second. On a project here in the north, we have a lot of projects up here going on, and you've got snow and thaw, right? Mm-hmm. Snow and thaw on a job site's got to be an issue for you guys, especially.
100%. Because what do you do with the snow? I mean, usually we just pile it up on the deck somewhere, and then it starts to melt, and it's just dripping through the building. And a lot of these insurance companies, when you're working with a wood product, they want you to actually put together a water mitigation plan on the job site. So it's like a daily safety inspection you have to do to look for water issues, right? So, for instance, the project that I did, they wanted a water mitigation plan. The insurance company did before we went to steel.
Yeah.
So we had to control water access on the job site. So I could only have 2 water sources on this job site, right? 70,000 square feet. So that means when the drywaller is when he's finishing the drywall, he's got to walk all the way across the job to get water and bring it back to where he's working, right? That's time that's not accounted for in a schedule. But with this, because you'll never file a claim for water damage
right.
on cold form.
Yeah.
It completely eliminates that. It saves the general contractor and all of his subcontractors time, and it's just one less headache for the developer on the insurance piece.
I think some of the points that we're covering today are demonstrating where there is still a disconnect where people don't understand that ultimately the structure itself provides both a cost and schedule advantage, that goes beyond the original hard cost quote, which is where everybody gets hung up on, right? We get hung up on this, well, what's your cost? Well, you need to drop 20,000 so we can make this work, or 100,000 to make this work. But none of that considers those follow-on costs on that cost to build that's being dropped into that, because they're unknowns and they're hard to manage, because for a general contractor, they're unknowns. There might be a lot, there might be none, there might be few. Point is that there is a big disconnect where the most general contractors, when they're looking at this, are not factoring in those latent opportunities of cost savings that would have been attributed to a lower cost to us from the get-go. And we talk a lot about that, cost to build versus, the quoted cost. So
yeah, and if you can build your building 30% faster, right? Let's say that translates into 2 months on a large project.
Yeah.
That's 2 months of burn rate on GCs that the developer doesn't have to pay. That's 2 months of construction loan interest that he's not carrying anymore. Right? There's a lot of different carrying costs where you start talking to me. These aren't small numbers.
Yeah.
Right? We're talking tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, all in, if you can get your project done 2 months faster without changing anything other than the substrate which the drywall sits on.
In a project like this, for example, we got brought in by the general contractor in this case, who introduced us to the owner. And right now, the owner has had us work on managing and starting to help manipulate the design going forward. And we're working with the general contractor on that through direct experience here and how we can apply those. And I think there's about 6 or 8 more projects just in this particular style alone. And I think it's a testament when you get a team like a Douglas company and Intellisteel, you end up having an opportunity where you can create this, an RTC, you can create this really unique teamwork approach that's addressed the issues up front. On the first ones for them, we've done many together, and then when you start to get a teamwork approach, all of a sudden now everything starts to adjust. Now your timelines go down. Now the headaches go away. Now the concerns or where they might be apprehensive about using this product start to dissipate. And you start working with several different groups within the organization, like the Douglas Company, who is one of the largest assisted living, senior living builders in the US. You start working with different groups as we are now, and now you start to get them to share information together, learn together, and take those learned opportunities and turn them into money, time, and savings, right?